Hello and welcome, meet Julian. Julian wakes up every morning around 6:45 a.m., usually a few minutes before his alarm. It's not discipline. It's conditioning. His body has learned the rhythm after years of repetition. Same ceiling, same quiet room, same thought sitting in the back of his mind before the day even begins. Another workday. Julian has been working for a little over 12 years. Not drifting, not stuck, progressing. Promotions came slowly but consistently. Better titles, better responsibilities, better pay. By most standards, Julian succeeded. He earns a $98,000 a year. That number sounds impressive when spoken out loud. It sounds like stability. It sounds like security. It sounds like the finish line his younger self was running toward when money felt tight and the future felt uncertain. His parents still mention it with pride. Friends assume money isn't a problem for him anymore. But here's the part no one sees. Julian doesn't feel rich. He doesn't feel ahead. He feels managed. Every month feels carefully balanced. Every paycheck feels allocated before it arrives. And almost every morning, before he even reaches for his phone, the same quiet question forms in his mind. How am I earning this much and still feel stuck? That question isn't about discipline. It isn't about intelligence. And it isn't about working harder. It's about how the system is built. Julian gets paid twice a month. When the deposit hits his account, there's a brief moment of relief. A sense that everything is under control. But that feeling fades quickly because Julian never experiences his income as one solid resource. He experiences it in fragments. Before the money even feels real, it's already divided. Rent takes once $550. Utilities average $170. Phone, internet, and subscriptions total $160. Car payment, insurance, fuel, and maintenance add up to $670. Groceries and eating out hover around $490. Health-related expenses average $180. Student loan payments take another $420. By the time Julian actually stops and looks at his finances, almost every dollar already has a job. And none of those jobs are working for him. Here's the clever part. Nothing about this feels reckless. He's not overspending. He's not chasing luxury. He's not living irresponsibly. He has a comfortable apartment, a reliable car, good food, small conveniences that make life easier. So his brain tells him, this is normal. This is what success looks like. But comfort is not freedom. The system doesn't break you. It maintains you. It keeps you just comfortable enough to stop asking deeper questions. When money arrives as one number and disappears in dozens of small, automatic transactions, your brain never fully processes the reality. You don't feel broke. You feel busy. You feel stable. You feel like everyone else. That's not an accident. A few years ago, Julian earned $63,000. Back then, he believed that once he crossed at $85,000 everything would change. He imagined savings growing effortlessly, stress fading, space opening up. It didn't happen. When his income increased, his life quietly expanded to absorb it. A better neighborhood felt justified. A newer car felt reasonable. More convenience felt earned. Each decision made sense in isolation. None of them felt extreme. Each one felt like progress. But together, they created something dangerous. Dependence. Julian didn't just increase his income, he increased the cost of maintaining his life. His lifestyle stopped being flexible and became fixed. Stepping away from his job no longer felt like an option. It felt like a threat. That's when the pressure changed. It wasn't about ambition anymore. It was about survival. From the outside, this looks like success. From the inside, it feels like obligation. And the most uncomfortable truth is that no one forced Julian into this position. The system didn't demand upgrades. It simply offered them. Human psychology did the rest. We're taught that moving up means winning. But moving up often just means more commitments, more bills, and more things that collapse if income pauses. That's why people earning $45,000 and people earning $145,000 often report the same level of financial stress. The number changes. The pressure doesn't. Because the real issue was never income. It was structure. Julian started noticing the pattern everywhere once he became aware of it. At work, promotions were celebrated like victories. People smiled more when their salary increased. Titles carried weight. Bigger numbers brought temporary relief. But underneath the surface, the emotional state of everyone around him stayed almost identical. Stress didn't disappear. Anxiety didn't shrink. Freedom didn't expand. It just changed shape. Julian watched colleagues earn more and complain just as much. He watched friends upgrade their lives and quietly panic about money at the same time. He watched people chase raises the way someone on a treadmill chases distance, running harder but never arriving anywhere new. That's when something clicked. The salary wasn't the reward, it was the leash. The system never tells you this directly. It doesn't need to. It relies on a much more powerful force: normalization. Everyone around you lives this way. Everyone you know accepts it, so it must be fine. But normal doesn't mean healthy. Normal just means common. Julian realized that his financial life was built entirely around one assumption: the paycheck would always arrive. Every bill, every commitment, every plan depended on that assumption holding true. And that's where the real risk lived. Because the moment your entire life depends on one source of income, you lose leverage, you lose flexibility, you lose the ability to say no, you become compliant. This is why people stay in jobs they hate. Not because they lack courage, but because their expenses have removed their options. Leaving isn't scary because of uncertainty. Leaving is scary because of certainty. The certainty that bills don't stop just because income does. Julian thought about what would happen if his job disappeared tomorrow. Not hypothetically. Realistically. Rent wouldn't pause. The car payment wouldn't wait. Student loans wouldn't care. Groceries wouldn't discount themselves. Everything would continue as if nothing had changed. Only the paycheck would be gone. That realization reframed everything. Security wasn't about how much he earned. It was about how resilient his life was without earning. And right now, his life wasn't resilient at all. That's when Julian stopped asking how to increase income and started examining his expenses differently. Not from a place of restriction, but from a place of strategy. He asked a simple question. If this expense disappeared, would my life actually get worse? Some expenses passed that test. Many didn't. He realized that a huge portion of his spending wasn't buying happiness or value. It was buying continuity. It was buying the ability to keep everything exactly the same. And sameness is expensive. The system rewards people who don't change. It rewards predictability. It rewards routines that never challenge the structure. Banks love predictable payments. Landlords love predictable tenants. Subscription companies love predictable renewals. Predictability makes you profitable. But it doesn't make you wealthy. Wealth requires slack. Wealth requires margin. Wealth requires the ability to absorb shock. Julian began to understand the real difference between income and wealth. Income is movement. Wealth is position. Income flows in and out. Wealth stays. Income depends on effort. Wealth depends on ownership. You can earn a high income and still be fragile. But even modest wealth creates stability far beyond its number. That insight changed how Julian looked at money completely. He stopped thinking in terms of monthly cash flow and started thinking in terms of runway. How long could he survive if nothing came in? Not comfortably, not ideally, just realistically. At first, the answer embarrassed him. Then it motivated him. Instead of using extra income to upgrade his lifestyle, he redirected it to reduce dependence. He paid himself first, not in the motivational quote sense, but in the structural sense. Savings became non-negotiable. Investments became intentional. Spending became deliberate, not restricted. Deliberate. The gap between what he earned and what he spent slowly widened. That gap became the most important number in his financial life. Because that gap created choice. With 1 month of expenses saved, Julian felt slightly calmer. With 3 months, he felt different. With 6 months, he felt powerful. Not because he could quit, but because he didn't have to obey. That's the shift most people never experience. When you don't need the paycheck immediately, your posture changes. You negotiate better. You think clearer. You take smarter risks. You stop accepting situations that drain you. You stop being reactive. The system loses its grip when urgency disappears. Julian hadn't escaped work. He hadn't escaped responsibility. But he had escaped fragility. And that changed everything. Because freedom isn't about not working. It's about not being trapped by the need to work. The salary trap thrives on urgency. It thrives on the fear that everything collapses if you pause. The moment that fear weakens, the system starts losing control, and that's when real wealth building actually begins. Julian understood something important at that point. Escaping the salary trap was not about rejecting work or income. It was about changing the role income played in his life. As long as income was the only pillar holding everything up, pressure would never disappear. So he simplified the problem into something he could actually control. He stopped chasing bigger numbers and focused on structure. He drew a clear line between two things most people confuse: obligations and assets. Obligations were anything that demanded money from him every month just to exist. Rent above what he truly needed. Payments that locked him into fixed timelines. Convenience costs that felt small individually but heavy together. Assets were different. Assets were things that created space. Savings that bought time. Investments that could grow without his daily presence. Skills that could earn outside a single employer. Julian realized most people build their lives almost entirely out of obligations, and then try to solve the pressure by increasing income. That never works for long. The obligations always catch up, so he reversed the process. Instead of asking, "Can I afford this?" he started asking, "Does this increase my dependence or reduce it?" That single question eliminated more expenses than any budgeting method ever could. He didn't punish himself. He didn't strip joy out of life. He just removed things that existed only to maintain appearances or routine. The result wasn't deprivation, it was relief. As the gap between what he earned and what he spent stabilized, Julian felt something unfamiliar. Time. Not free time but mental time. Space to think without urgency. Space to plan without panic. Space to make decisions instead of reactions. That's when the biggest shift happened. Julian stopped measuring success by salary and started measuring it by optionality. How many months could he live without stress? How many choices could he say no to? How resilient was his life if things didn't go perfectly? Those questions mattered more than any promotion, because real security isn't about predicting the future, it's about being prepared for uncertainty. The salary trap survives because most people are taught to optimize for comfort instead of resilience. Comfort feels good now, resilience protects you later. Julian chose later, not dramatically, not loudly, quietly, consistently, and over time, the pressure that once sat permanently in the background of his life faded. Not because he escaped the system entirely, but because he stopped being dependent on it. That's the truth most people never hear. The goal isn't to stop working. The goal is to stop needing permission to survive. When income becomes a tool instead of a lifeline, everything changes. Decisions become clearer. Fear loosens its grip, and wealth stops being a fantasy and starts becoming a structure you can actually build. That's how the salary trap works, and that's how you step out of it.